My name is Fariborz Azhakh. I was born in Tehran, Iran. In northern part of Tehran, it's called Saltanatabad, which was and where all the officers from the army lived. That's where I was actually born. To a family of 6 kids. I'm the youngest one. My dad passed away when I was almost 6 months old, a little bit less. I was under the impression till only a few years ago that he committed suicide, but only in the last couple of years I found out that he was actually killed. I grew up with some strong role models. My brothers, my sisters, and my mom. My mom was super young when my dad died. She was only 28, with having 6 kids. If you can imagine that, with no father, and now that he's gone. He was considered a martyr. And so that's why, we got help from the government to kind of help us, a single woman to help us, grow the kids, to help them grow. And so that was where I grew up. I went to school. I went to elementary school. Then we moved to another part of Tehran, and I had the people who really, like my friends who had a big influence on me during that time, was Bahram, which he's actually happened to be here. We call him Benny. So Bahram was one of my first influences of excellence. What that means is that he was really good in school. He was great at doing calligraphy, which I loved. He was great at playing ping pong, which I loved, and I follow partly because of him. And he was great at playing guitar. So that was my first kind of a love that, thank God, I had something that I would, spend time on, was watching him, be the gift that he is, and, all the stuff that he did, but I wanted to be like him. So, I did calligraphy, then I played ping pong with him, then I also played, learn how to play guitar. He played classical and he sang, so I used to play with him, and that kept me going for years. When I was around between the ages of 9 to about 12, 13, that was a huge deal. Then that's when the revolution happened. This is around 78 when it happened, and then there was an opportunity for me to leave the country, and my mom wanted to get me out, and that's how I got out of the country. But before that, my older brother, was influential in introducing me to martial arts. And the way he did it, we used to go on Fridays, that's our day off kind of weekend over there. We used to take me to see Bruce Lee movies. And I still clearly remember, all the martial art movies. And when the Bruce Lee came, that was I think I watched Enter the Dragon so many times, even though it wasn't translated. I just love the presence and every movements, everything about the movie. And that's how I got my first official kind of falling in love with martial arts, was watching the martial art movies. And for my brother to have that influence, because during the whole week I would look forward to that one Friday morning where he would come and take me and we will watch a movie together. So in a way, he was like my role model and being a father figure that I never had. So that was all before I actually left and came to US. So when I first came to US, I had a couple of different experiences. One, on the flight coming to US, my flight stopped in Paris and I got lost and didn't get my second flight from Paris to New York. And I got lost and I had no idea what's going on. Didn't speak French or English or anything. Thank God, somebody was there who took me to somebody who speak Farsi, and somehow another one, but I missed my flight for good like 10 hours, right? So my brother was waiting for me in LAX, so the flight was from to New York to LA, and my brother was waiting for me, and I never came. So they said, no, he never boarded the plane in New York. So that made the whole thing kind of strange. My mom was worried in Iran, but my brother kept it cool for like trying to play phone tags with my mom. But so he knew everything is going to be okay. And I knew everything was going to be okay, but it was amazing. Came to New York, got another flight, everything kind of helped out, and we got to LA and saw my brother, thank God. And anyway, so my brother was here. One of the greatest things he did for me, which I never forget, I owe him a lot, is that he had me go to a small, very small city in California called Santa Maria, and had me stay with an American family. First, I stayed with a good friend, Sean. But I stayed with this American family, which really helped me to understand and learn English better. The watching cartoons was the greatest thing for me. And first of all, having the experience of learning another language. Unless you've done it, you have no idea how difficult that is, how hard it is, how depressing it is. And it was strange being in a country and in Santa Maria, in a city where this is before the hostages happened, before the whole crisis. So a lot of people didn't have any idea where Iran was. So they couldn't understand that I'm dark hair and I don't speak Spanish. So the teacher would say, oh, you don't speak English? They would go get a Spanish person and say, oh, let's see what that guy says. And I'm like, I don't understand that either, So it was kind of strange because, and for them it was an experience, But I never forget one of my first experiences was, so I came here in October. And I remember that my first day in school was like, I don't know, it was like a Monday or something. It was October 31st, was Halloween. That was my first day going to a high school, the last year, and walking in thinking everybody's wearing, all these outfits and costumes. And it was the scariest thing for, 15, 16-year-old kid who doesn't know what's going on, And I had a breakdown. I remember I went to the first period and I came out and sat outside the school, cried till like 2, 3 in the afternoon, when my friend Sean came and picked me up. And he's like, why didn't you say anything to anybody? And I said, I didn't know what to say. Is this how it is? Is this how the teachers, I came from a very strict, educational system, and I thought this was going to be like that. Anyway, so, and I used to get, a lot of people used to make fun of me and my accent, and, so that's where I really made a commitment that I didn't want to have an accent, even though I still do, but I didn't want to have a heavy accent like most, Persians, foreigners do. So I really wanted to work on that, and I didn't have anybody to teach me that. I mean, there was no DVDs, no CDs during that time. There were cassette players or a dictionary. I used to carry a big ass dictionary with me. But I think the main thing was watching cartoons. Like I love Tom and Jerry. And people at the high school got kind of good with me because I was playing a little bit of guitar, played a little ping pong. Thanks again to Barry, who, Benny, who taught me that years ago. But those are kind of a thing like, oh, he plays guitar, come to the music section. Even I had no idea what they're saying. But little by little, that kind of opened up. I ended up having some friends. Then I was graduated from Santa Maria, went to Righetti High School. This is, 79 maybe. Then came back to LA. And so that's where I was in Redondo Beach, Torrance area for a little bit. Then I moved to the Valley with my sister when she came from Iran. And that's when we had a friend, Cyrus, was Sean's brother, who was telling me about this martial arts school. But it's weird because I already had thought about, I'm going to go take martial arts, because in Torrance, I went to the Cam Ewan school. I went to Cam Ewan for, I think, maybe 10 sessions. I signed up for a couple months, but I only could do 10 before we moved. And I just loved it. And it's funny because I ran into Cam Ewan at the Dragon Fest a couple of years ago, and I told him, of course, he didn't remember. But that was my first official class, was Kung Fu. But I only took like 10 lessons. Then when I moved to the Valley, Mike Stone, the old Mike Stone, the shorter gentleman who used to break ice and stuff, he was down the street from me. And I remember I almost went to him. Or Cecil Peoples, who actually, when I used to go work at Peck Sales, which we talk about that later. When I used to take the bus back, I saw his school. I was like, I was going to have to stop by. This was in Van Nuys. But Cyrus said, no, let's go see this other place. This guy, his name is Steve Sexton, who teaches Hapkido. Come, let's try a class. Because I've been there. He was doing it for a couple of months, and I thought he was just the coolest guy, you know. And that's how I got introduced to Steve Sexton. And that's where really my whole martial arts career started, by studying Hapkido. I remember when I was a yellow belt, I had my ribs broken by him. And he really taught me a lesson. You know, I never forget that incident. I was just being, you know, you can't tell now, but I used to be very cocky. But anyway, I was cocky to him, and I talked back, and I did something in the class. But he side-kicked me so hard, broke my ribs. And he thought, I haven't talked to him afterwards a few times. We laugh at it now. But he thought, that's it, I'm gone. But I was there the next day. And you know, with the broken ribs, they can't really do much with you. But I had a whole body cast. I was there the next day. So for like 4 to 6 months, I was there watching classes, and I would take notes. Every day I was there from when he opened till he went to, you know, it was done. And I wrote stuff, and I watched, and he was like, what are you doing here, man? You got to rest. I'm like, I can't. I need to be here, you know? Then after 4 to 6 months, when I got healed, and I get back into training, and that's when I really went really fast. You know, because I've been watching all this stuff. I've been, you know, thinking about what he's saying from a different point of view than being on the mat. And so that's where, you know, the martial arts kind of all became, you know, together for me. Then an opportunity came when I was just before my test for black belt, which was 82, that he had a partner. There were both two partners who owned the school. One of them wanted to step out. And Steve was really, this was, you know, he had his time of teaching. He didn't want to teach anymore. So opportunity came for me, and for me to step in and say, why don't you come? After his partners came to me and said, why don't you come and buy my, you know, half off, half from me, then you can become partners with Steve. Which for me was a dream come true. I never forget, I had a brand new 82 yellow Celica, Toyota Celica. I never forget, I had worked so hard to get, and I gave him that card, even though I was making payments on it, but I gave it to him. So I had no car, and so I became Steve's partner. Then we made a deal with Steve. Steve, after a little bit of time, after I took over, then he kind of stepped out. But here I was, just had my black belt, and, you know, started teaching, you know, and that's where the whole thing for me to start it. I got exposed to tournaments, which was a, you know, big thing for me, because it opened my eyes to a whole different level. There was a few people in the Valley who I'm so proud still keep in touch with both of them. Simon Ree was there before the school, before I started. Then Dennis Ichikawa was there. Those were like the top schools in the Valley who teaches Tang Soo Do, and Simon, who's, you know, does Taekwondo. And so never really talked to Simon. We never got close because, you know, whatever reason it was, till actually only a few years ago, which now I'm proud to call him my friend, and we, you know, we have lunch on a weekly basis. But anyway, so that exposed me to tournaments. But during that time, I had a day job. So I was a waiter. I was working in a restaurant. I was working at Magic Pan. Then I worked on a couple other places during the day for lunches or over the weekends. Then I would come in the afternoon. I would teach classes. And for about maybe 8 months, I slept at the studio because I didn't have a car, so I had my bike. And so I would come. Then my first car was a Dodge Dart. I think it was in 1961 or 2, which I bought for like $350. You know, I never forget that car. It was a great car, but it got me around. You know. Anyway, so I started that, and that's when, little by little, I got exposed to, through the tournament world, started seeing what other styles are, what other people do, and I got introduced to EFC. So EFC, which is Educational Funding Company, which was, they're the first one who started doing conventions. I was in a third June Ree business seminar, because, you know, during that time, a lot of people cannot relate to this now, but my whole thing was I used to look forward to getting a black belt magazine every month, or Karate Illustrated or Inside Karate, whatever it was. Once a month it would come. It was like, I'm going to take that. Take me 2 hours to go through the whole thing. I had my own method of going through it. But anyway, Junior was advertising the business seminars. And I remember that was in Florida, Sarasota, Florida, with Master Lee. And I remember that was my first time traveling. I went over there, and that exposed me to a whole different way of, doing making a distinction between the teaching martial arts and having a business of martial arts, how I can make both of them work together. Steve Sexton told me years later that he never thought I would continue. Thought that was it. But I didn't. I had even to this date, I never had a second option. I never had if this doesn't work out, I'm going to do it. So my mindset was always, this is going to work. This is going to work. This is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. And EFC was a big help because it got me, I understood networking. I understood having I got to know some great people in the industry. Ernie Reyes Sr., Chris Rappold, some of these people from different states. And then I got a chance to travel to their school and seeing, oh my God, see what else is possible. So here I am in Canoga Park in a little tiny place. Then, so I lost the lease on that place because they wanted to raise the rent. So I went to a smaller place. I had a really tiny place, and I went to another place only for a little bit. I have a student named Salvador Trevino, which I'll never forget. Kind of gives me goosebumps when I think about it. I was teaching his wife and him. He was like, you cannot be here. This is like a little nothing. Canoga Park, you got to go get yourself find a better place. And I said, there's no way I can afford it. He goes, go find a place. And we find my other school, the one in Victory, which, was, 6,000, 7,000 square feet. And 2 levels, which I was there for about 33 years before we came here. Salvador actually helped me get that place. I never forget, he wrote a check for the first month last month and the lease, and he's like, no, you go your thing, and when you have it, you pay me back. And which I did. I started making monthly payments to him, and I paid him off. Anyway, so that's how the school, but there was a point in the tournaments where I needed to make a little bit of separation between being a teacher or being the best martial artist I can be, and physically speaking. And I think I had experienced a lot of different martial arts, but I chose to be a much better teacher. I chose to be a teacher. So I wanted to know how to teach better. So I got into more public speaking. Through Pick Sales, where I worked before, I was introduced to a couple self-development seminars. One of them was PSI, People Synergistically Involved. Then I was introduced to LifeSpring. Then I went to all the motivational, self-development classes. And I started incorporating some of those into the teaching, which worked. I said 90% of it worked great. And so I became a little bit of different in the martial art industry as far as what I was doing. I took it to a whole different level, came up with a whole black belt testing process, was the whole 6 months process with a pre-test and all the experiences that I wanted to do. But they were all influenced by these other people that I had seen. Then I started training physically with different people. So one of my biggest experiences being introduced to Filipino martial arts through Ron Balicki, which it just opened my eyes to a whole different level of things. Meeting Sensei Benny took me to a whole different level. So these are some of the people who had huge influence in my physical side of martial arts, along with other side. But David Myers, who took me to grappling, introduced me to the world of grappling. And this is just when the UFC was kind of starting, the whole thing. And so I stepped out after hosting a few tournaments, and I kind of stepped out of the whole thing with the tournaments. That wasn't my thing, and I was not the best at it. I was not, there were people who were a lot better. And but I just said, I want to make my business better. I want to become a really good teacher. And how can I become that? So I seeked out different role models, different people. And again, I can honestly say that I've trained literally with the best in the world. I've gotten, I don't know the system, I don't know the whole thing, but I got to know the basic elements of the systems and these people, and I brought it in, and that's where the Hapkido blend was born, the system. One of the biggest things that took me from here to here was during the tournament scene. Joe Jennings, who was used to own the Panther Productions, which by then was the main source of VHS and videos and martial arts. He considered me to represent Hapkido, which was really strange for me because first I'm non-Korean, and there's so many other Korean masters, and I was already getting heat from most of them. But he said, no, you can do this. You could do this, let's do it. So we made the whole Hapkido series, which really helped me. This is purely the Steve Sexton's curriculum that I did. And to this date, I'm really proud to say that the curriculum that I learned from Steve Sexton, I've never learned anything anywhere else that I went, oh my God, this is brand new. I've never seen this before. I think the elements of it was already something that Steve had taught me, because Steve gave me something more than anything else. He gave me wings. Like he said, go out there. There's more. Go find out. I never did because I did it the way but you should go see what else is out there. And so that kind of opened up a whole new thing for me to get into the martial arts. And Panther Production was a big stepping stone because it took my name to a whole different level. Mostly good, but a few times bad because people, Korean people were like, why is he doing that? Because he's not a Korean or whatever. But I never forget, the gentleman that was really supportive of this whole thing was Bong Soo-han. He was the man, and he was just, I went to him and I said, I did the Hapkido Panther, and he had seen it. He goes, it's good. It's fresh blood. It's good blood. Go do your thing. He was really, really a gentleman, in martial arts, and I got to know him. Then I started. Meanwhile, I started training with Jihan Jae, which is the highest ranking in Hapkido. So that was a huge thing for me because Jihan Jae was the man in Hapkido. I mean, they couldn't go any higher than that. So he was in San Bruno or Daly City in San Francisco. So I share with you a quick story about him. First time I called him and said, hey, I want to come to you and study. He goes, okay, good. You drive here. I said, well, easier to fly. He goes, no, you drive. I'm like, San Francisco is like 6 hours, 8 hours. So anyway, I went, I think that time was, this is, I don't know, 85, 86, maybe, no, actually less, maybe 83, 84, that he said $200 an hour. That's a lot of money, even now, comparing to then. But I said, okay, so I drove all the way over there. I went to a school, said hello, wore my uniform. I never remember because I wore a black uniform and he didn't like it. He said, you wear white, so I don't have any. So he had me wear one of his old uniforms. Somebody was there, And so we started, I stretched. He goes, okay, show me a side kick. And I did a side kick, and, my toes were kind of up. So he goes, your toes are up. And I said, oh, I know. And I remember him stepping back and said, And I asked me, I said, yeah, I know. He looked at me, bowed, and said, great, then the lesson is over. And that was it. He walked out, went to his office, and I'm like, what do you mean? Anyway, so I was really upset. I had paid for the lesson. I came out and drove all the way back. But I think in between the 6 or 7 hour and the way back, I realized I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have talked back. I shouldn't have said. So I came back, made a call again, said, hey, sorry, I didn't mean that. I want to come back again. Jihan Jae was a very experimental teacher. He didn't just want for you to do something. He would put you in a position so you would get it. A little harsh, but for me, it was the best thing. Anyway, that was one of the examples of Jihan Jae. And to this date, I still keep in touch with him. I don't follow the Shinmu Hapkido, which is he created. I've chosen to do other stuff, but I highly respect the man. He took me to a whole different level of training. Over the maybe 4 to 6 years, I would see him once a month. He would fly on a Friday morning to Burbank. I would pick him up, spend a weekend with me, go back Sunday night. So I got into a lot of personal relationship with him. Those are the best years of, he made me understand the history and some of the technical aspect. So it was really great for me to have, Jihan Jae there. So and life, my martial arts life kind of took over from that. So looking back into all my accomplishments, along those, there were many failures. And I don't mean to sound like, I don't want to sound like a victim, or I don't want to blame anyone for all these lessons, but I'm the type of person who learned lessons the hard way. And if I had better role models, again, this is one of those downfalls of being so young, being thrown into a whole different culture, another country, mixed between the cultures and all this stuff, and coming here. This was one of the downfalls of that, was that I had no role models. Nobody pulled me aside and say, hey, you got to do this and this and this, and you got to do this and this. So I had to learn things on my own, which ended up, in the long run, is fine, but there were definitely some failures. Failure in relationships with people, a divorce, not understanding communication skills. I wish I had, if I had to go back, I would have done more of all my searching, all this journey of getting to know myself and martial arts. I would have spent more time maybe outside of martial arts, and recognizing that this bubble called martial arts is great, but there's a world outside. There's a world outside that if I had taken the time to step out more, again, not to be a victim or be, but it is what it is. If I had to go back, that's what I would do. There's another world out there. I think I got too involved into the ego. Like I mentioned this before to you, I finally understood that, after, and I think I'm talking about, I'm from and many martial artists that I know, that I'm not Bruce Lee, I'm not Chuck Norris, I'm not all these big names, and trying to dress like them or talk like them or be like them, it won't get me, so the greatest for me thing is to find out what's my gift is. And that's the journey that I've going through for the last 10 years. What is my gift? What is my purpose here? And I think the purpose is what am I here to make a difference? And all my pains or all my failures have brought me to this point. But to find out what is my purpose, and I'm not super clear about that yet, but I'm more clear than 20 years ago. Being 2021 being the worst year for all the businesses, all the martial arts, all this stuff, I'm still sticking to it, because just like 30 years ago, I don't have a plan B. Like this is my life. This is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to make it work. All the schools are going down, closing. All this stuff is happening. All this stuff because of 2022. But back of my mind, there's still that little voice, which I've learned to trust, who has led me to some bad things and got me out of them. But I should have listened to it more clearly sometimes, and I didn't, and I paid a heavy price for it. But now I'm listening to that voice. I'm beginning to trust that inner voice again. Where am I? What am I doing? Is it real? Again, this is a quote that came from Tom Callis, another one of my personal heroes, who always talks about that. Like, it's all about now, right? Where am I now? Whatever it took me to get here is great, but what about now? What do you want to do now? Sensei Benny, who always talks about, it's not about my championships. It's not about my stories. It's about now. What are you doing now? Don't live in your past. I know a lot of martial artists sit down and talk about, we used to be good old boys. We used to go fight, whatever. I want to be about now and what am I going to do now? Not about my highlights of the stories and stuff that I did before. Anyway, so failures have taught me how to get better. How to get better and better. Then my biggest accomplishments are my kids, right? It's not necessarily just my students or my black belts, but it is my legacy, right? It's through my kids and my family, and my second family, which comes from the world of martial arts. So talking about what inspires me, and that's to be authentic and to be to know my purpose about why I'm here for, And after getting to know almost the best in my field, in the martial arts field, getting to know, and everything, when it comes down to it, we all want to be validated. We all want to be noticed. I'll give you an example. This is just from my daughter, I never forget. I think she was maybe 3 or 4. Whenever she went out to the patio, she would always, doesn't matter what I was doing, I would get up and open the door, stand out there while she went out there, played, and come back. And after she was like 3, maybe 4, one time I'm like, she's old enough, she doesn't do anything, so I'm just going to sit back, let her do it. And I remember she went out, she came right back and said, "Daddy, always come and get me." And I remember that clearly, thinking, God, she just wants to be validated. It's not me watching out for her. She just wanted to know that I'm there, right? And I do that sometimes still, wanting attention or getting attention or being validated by other people. But it gets to a point that external validation can become a mirage. It becomes fake, and it becomes demanding. And if my self-esteem starts depending on that, then I'm in trouble. Because what if you don't get that external validation? So that's when I need to do some stuff that are internal, that I'm validating myself internally from what I believe in, the things I do. So ended up not being like other people, ending up not doing what other people is, not following certain people, but it felt good. Like it just felt warm in my heart that I don't need that external validation. It's still nice. I shouldn't say I don't need it. I would like it. I still like it, but I don't need it. So I feel good inside my skin. I still got a long way to go. This is not the end of the thing, but I'm just finding more peace with myself. That's why, my whole philosophy has been, I'm all for peace. I live it, I teach it, I preach it, but I'm not against violence. And that's a pretty weird thing to listen to, but I'm not. I think it's necessary when the right time comes against the right person. Violence is necessary. But I'm all for peace. And I will do whatever I can do. And just like we teach how to make a fist, we say, be nice, be nice, be nice, be nice, till it gets to a point you will not be nice, right? And that's how we punch. That's how we make a fist. And to me, a good man is not a peaceful man. It's not somebody who can't do anything. They're always afraid. They can't do anything. A peaceful man is somebody who can do horrible things to you, but chooses to control that aspect. Right, and chooses to be, civilized and be with everybody else. But God, if it gets down to it, you don't want to pass this point, right? And having role models like Sensei Benny, Richard Norton and Ron Bulicki, Steve Saxton. These are my people who live that life. They are like that. These are the nicest people. Like Steve says, my teacher says, I want to be so nice that I can kill someone. Right, and so my whole thing is, after seeing all these people and seeing the best of them and worst of them, is to think to myself, what is my true gift to the industry, to my people, and to my kids. I think my most, what I want to be remembered by is not necessarily by what I think for other people, but what I did for the people close to me, and my family, my kids. But to the whole martial art industry is to be real, right? There's too many people that are just fake out there, who are not being authentic to themselves. And you want to seek out ways to learn, or I should say unlearn, because there's in the process of building up this ego, and if you want to get to a pure space, I think there's more unlearning and taking away stuff that needs to be done than adding. So spending more time by myself, being clear about my purpose, about what I want to do, just unlearning, letting go of some of the things that makes me heavy. I always talk about that because I don't want to be heavy on people. I want to come into a room and people feel safer. It sounds weird, but I do. I want people to go, oh my God, it feels good to have you here, right? Not scary, not like, oh, it's gonna, never, But I think that would be my legacy. There are more new chapters coming up. There's I still got work to do, and I still got stuff that I need to accomplish. I've touched some people, but there's more coming. There's more coming to the story, and but for right now, this is what it is.